Late in the 16th century, England lived under Elizabeth I's uneasy calm, a Protestant state shaped by riots, recusancy trials, and the shadow of continental religious wars. In 1582, John Dee, a Cambridge-trained mathematician and court advisor, turned his relentless intellect toward the divine. His house at Mortlake on the Thames, a timbered manor in Surrey that held an alchemical laboratory and a vast library, became a cramped, candlelit setting for occult experiments. Dee wanted transcendent knowledge. Angelic instruction he hoped would correct calendars, inform political decisions, and offer spiritual assurance. He also wanted patronage to restore his standing at court. Into that hungry atmosphere came Edward Kelley in 1582, a charismatic scryer from Worcester who claimed he could call spirits with a polished shoe stone, a crystal used for scrying. Kelley's arrival turned theory into practice. At Mortlake, they held daily sessions, gazed into the stone, and filled Latin diaries with shaky transcripts. The stakes were brutally practical. Secret knowledge that might win royal favor, a scholar's reputation on the line, the danger of being accused of sorcery, and the promise of salvation or damnation. Anticipation tightened like a noose as Mortlake's candles guttered and, under watchful eyes, the first voices allegedly spoke. In 1582 at Mortlake, the alchemist and scholar John Dee and the scryer Edward Kelley began the first sustained, grisly experiment that produced what Dee later called the angelic material. Kelley peered into a polished shoe stone while Dee, candles guttering and his hand trembling over the ink, transcribed every utterance into his journals. Identified in Dee's notes as a practical scryer from Worcester, Kelley reported visions of pallid, articulate intelligences and supplied strings of unfamiliar syllables and characters. Dee recorded those syllables in Latin marginalia, copied the characters into square methodical tables, and sketched framed letter grids and instructions in the cramped hand that survives in his manuscripts. The work was both surgical and devotional. Dee combined precise notation, ritual prayer, repeated invocations, and fasting to secure what he called truthful revelation. He treated each apparition like a witness to be cross-examined, asking questions and checking answers with countersigns. Sessions were daily and often lasted for hours, with Kelley's voice rising and falling like a corpse's whisper, while Dee dictated translations, grammatical rules, and permutations for a new lexicon. Subscribe. Maybe it will keep the angels honest. The result was a corpus of calls, angelic tables of letters, and procedural instructions. The core of the system, later labeled Enochian, painstakingly entered into spiritual diaries and cipher notebooks. At first, exhilaration was fierce. Both men believed they had touched a transmissible language from beyond, a key to calendars, prophecy, and patronage. But tension crept in as method met theater. Dee's meticulous skepticism clashed with Kelley's charismatic improvisations, and small disputes over transcription, interpretation, and the authenticity of dramatic manifestations began to show. Those early, feverish transcripts at Mortlake did not remain private for long and forced a grim choice: keep the work a dangerous secret or push it outward to seek protection and patronage. That decision ultimately propelled them toward continental courts. The angelic material hardened into law-like, ravenous rules. The calls grew longer, the letter tables more labyrinthine, and the spirits demanded exacting rituals. Fasts, specified hours, and bloodless signs recorded in Dee's 1580s journals. Kelley's scrying produced not only syllables, but injunctions and keys that insisted on obedience. By 1585 to 1586, the sessions at Mortlake had become surgical and relentless, draining grain and coin from Dee's household and straining his already tenuous relationships with Elizabethan patrons. Fame and rumor created pressure. Nobles whispered of a new Enochian tongue that might unlock prophecy and transmutation. Kelley, increasingly silver-tongued and theatrical, began to promise not abstract revelation, but concrete alchemical returns, wealth, influence, and the authority of an occult lingua franca. In 1587, Dee and Kelley chose exile to avoid exposure. They left Mortlake and sailed for the continent, passed through the Low Countries and Poland, accepted hospitality from Moravian and Bohemian magnates, and by 1588 to 1589, presented themselves at courts hungry for secrets. William of Rosenberg took an interest, and in 1589 they sought audience in Prague with Emperor Rudolf II, the Habsburg sovereign who reigned from 1576 to 1612, and was famed for collecting occultists and alchemists at his court. The shift that followed was unsettling and, in a way, inevitable. Kelley's public charisma translated into patronage, while Dee's role hardened into the stenographer and theologian of the visions, cataloging the angel's grammar even as he grew more dependent on Kelley to perform the seance dramas. Power rearranged itself into a predator-scribe duet. Kelley's claims swelled and attracted lucrative pensions. Dee's reputation rode on the credibility Kelley projected. The pair marched into Bohemia under the gilded, sepulchral gaze of imperial expectation, setting the stage for fractures and darker bargains to come. After 1589, beneath the sepulchral gilt of Rudolf II's Hradčany court in Prague, the partnership that had bled and writhed in Mortlake finally snapped. Edward Kelley, the Worcestershire scryer who worked through a shoe stone, a crystal used for scrying, began to reap tangible rewards: imperial audiences, pensions, and the discreet patronage of Bohemian nobles who wanted both metal and miracle. Kelley proclaimed alchemical successes before Rudolf's retainers and at nearby noble houses in the early 1590s, and those claims gave him power. He moved through court with a new predatory authority that bypassed John Dee's careful rules and reputation. Dee, the Cambridge mathematician and theologian, stayed the recorder, the painstaking scribe of angelic scripts. But Kelley increasingly asserted ownership of the visions, deciding which angelic tables Dee could copy and which he could not. The angel's messages, once a single corpus of calls and letters at Mortlake, fractured into competing transcripts and interpretations. The same eerie syllables turned into both proof and excuse. Courtiers smelled trickery and heresy. Jesuit and Protestant factions, along with superstitious nobles across Bohemia, shifted uneasily as rumors spread that angels had ordered favors or gold. Personal pressure became moral fury. Dee's Protestant conscience and scholarly caution collided with Kelley's theatrical promises of transmutation and immediate reward. Arguments over authorship, money, and access to the angelic tables grew bitter, public, and sometimes physical. By the mid-1590s, their bond had corroded into distrust, sending them on divergent paths, one toward imperial favor and dangerous promises, the other toward isolation and a slow collapse that would culminate in the violent unraveling to come. By the mid-1590s, the partnership between scryer and scribe was coming apart. Kelley's theatrical promises of transmutation failed to produce the gold and spectacle Bohemian patrons expected, and whispers hardened into charges of imposture and betrayal. By 1596, his pensions were cut, audiences thinned, and his authority dissolved in Rudolf II's gilded court. Imperial retainers and local nobles pressed complaints. Kelley was arrested by Bohemian authorities and confined at Cheb, Eger. In prison, his health and fortunes withered beneath damp stone and barred windows. His once commanding voice was reduced to a hoarse, pleading murmur, and his hands produced only scrawled defenses. No rescue came. In 1597, Edward Kelley died at Cheb, ending in a cramped cell, the living echo of Mortlake's candlelit seances. His death is recorded in contemporary sources, and it extinguished the living medium through whom John Dee claimed revelation. With Kelley gone, the angelic tables lost their voice. The ritual engine that had driven the experiment stuttered to silence, and the Mortlake enterprise became a corpse of inked characters, a grim relic left to be argued over by courts, clerics, and historians. After Kelley's death, the grotesque sepulchral ledger of Mortlake survived inside John Dee's meticulous spiritual diaries. Those diaries preserve the Enochian calls, letter tables, and ritual notes that would seed centuries of occult revival and sustained scholarly scrutiny. The cramped, inked pages moved from private collections into public archives and became raw material for Rosicrucian and Hermetic writers, Victorian occultists, and modern ceremonial magicians. Historians, linguists, and theologians still argue over authenticity, authorship, and motive, parsing Dee's handwriting, Kelley's theatricality, and the role of continental patrons. The story crystallizes a few perennial themes: obsession that devours households, charisma that seduces courts, and the corrosive lure of forbidden knowledge that promises both power and ruin. From Mortlake to Prague, the episode endures as a cautionary parable bleeding into literature, ritual practice, and religious debate. And it forces us to ask, who pays the price when curiosity courts the abyss?